Welcome to Let the Word Do the Work program with your hosts, Toni and Minister Phil Buggs. This program is designed to encourage God's people to live contented lives despite their circumstances by letting the Word do the work. Now here's your hosts, Philip and Toni Buggs.
You whom I have taken from the ends of the earth and called from its farthest regions, and have said to you, You are my servant. I have chosen you and have not cast you away. Fear not, for I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. Yes, I will help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. Only be strong and very courageous, that you may observe to do according to all the law which Moses my servant commanded you. Do not turn from it to the right hand or to the left, that you may prosper wherever you go. This book of the law shall not depart out of your mouth, but you shall meditate in it day and night, that you may observe to do according to all that is written in it. For then you will make your way prosperous, and then you will have good success. Have I not commanded you? Be strong and of good courage. Do not be afraid, nor be dismayed, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. These scriptures are taken from Isaiah, the 41st chapter, the 9th and 10th verse, and Joshua, the 1st chapter, the 7th through the 9th verse, both from the New King James Version of the Bible.
Praise the Lord, saints, and welcome once again to another version of Let the Word Do the Work, where I am your host, Toni Buggs, along with my slightly graying at the temple husband, Philip Buggs.
Though the people cannot see that, dear, I am, as usual, very excited and glad to be here sharing with you today with my lovely, always has something new in her box, Toni.
Always have something in my bag of tricks, dear.
This is true.
Well, welcome once again, and by the time this show is airing, it is Valentine's Day. So for all your sweeties and sweethearts out there, happy Valentine's Day.
And fellas, if you have forgotten, be very stealth and say, oh yeah, I knew that. That's why I'm out, dear, because I'm getting you something for Valentine's Day.
Yeah, it's 12 noon, so you still got a little time for us. Well, another week has gone by, and we are journeying into part 7 of our journey.
Wow.
Last week we left off with the jarring news that you lost your job.
Yes, that program last week, there was a curve in the road where we experienced or began the experience of rain. We had some rain, but this started a definite turn from sunshine to rain.
Yeah,
yes.
and like Philip said, we're survivors. I mean, we can pretty much come through anything, but this time it was different, and the reason why it was different is because it wasn't just Philip and I. There were other individuals at Abundant Harvest Christian Fellowship that depended upon us.
Agreed.
There were other individuals that we had come in contact that had become dependent upon us. And so with the loss of that job, which equated the loss of a substantial amount of income, it threw us for a loop. It really did.
It did. It definitely did.
We heard that news in March of 2009.
Correct.
And getting over it, we didn't really have a whole lot of time to think about what just had happened because we had work to do.
No. One of the things that I in counseling or mentoring my adult child Philip Jr., my son, is that when he would run into rough times in life, I would always tell him, I said, son, you can't think about how you got out into this ocean. Your main priority is to get to shore. You don't have time to blame. You have to act and be as reactive, hopefully as proactive and reactive as possible to your present situation. Once you make it to shore, then you can talk about how you got out there and how not to get back. But while you're in the ocean, you can't be blaming. You've got to find ways to get to shore. So that is what Toni and my main priorities were. How do we turn this situation around? How do we get our feet back on solid ground?
And, of course, the most obvious thing was we need to get more income in.
Agreed.
Philip needs to find a job. I was working at the time. I made pretty good money, but I didn't make enough to take care of the whole household. Unfortunately, Philip wasn't eligible for unemployment because he had gotten some severance, that we were pinching off of.
Correct. And as most of you do know that was going through that time, unemployment does not pay much at all.
No, it doesn't.
And for the obligations that we had, it would not have put a dent into the financial needs that we had. So of course now we're looking, obviously we can't sustain this lifestyle, so Toni and I are starting to downsize. We talked last week about some of that.
That's right. And so of course, the first thing was, Philip would get out there and start looking for a job.
Sure.
And as he had mentioned last week, in the Phoenix area, he said last week, and it was very true, he couldn't buy a job in Phoenix.
This is true.
I mean, he went through the internet, got a career builder, put his resumes out there. But remembering that time, it was 2009. The as they say, the proverbial bubble had burst, and things were crashing down. And particularly out here in his industry, places were downsizing, laying off, weren't hiring, and so the days were going by, and all of a sudden a couple of months were going by, and we found ourselves in the end of April, and we decided that we need to probably start looking outside of Phoenix, and we would keep our home,
right.
But Philip would have to commute, so he started looking the surrounding areas of Arizona.
Right. I mean, initially, like we mentioned last week, I was looking toward the West Coast, but nothing was really happening. I mean, the machining industry, the manufacturing industry was, again, hemorrhaging. Everybody was pulling their belt in, just trying to weather the storm, didn't know how long it would last. And so new jobs or new part numbers or projects that manufacturing firms would normally get, they were holding back on those things. So there wasn't a need for programmers or engineers. And so the West Coast, so I started to look back the job or the business that I had when I came out to Phoenix. I ramped that back up, and while it was generating some income, it wasn't enough.
That's right.
And I needed to, again, start looking back in the East.
Right. I mean, as the months were going by, we had found ourselves, hitting July.
Yeah.
And during that time, we had started receiving, we were paying our mortgage, we were struggling, but in July, we were just having a difficult time paying that mortgage. By that time, our tenants in Detroit, the house that we had built, not so much built,
right.
but bought, not for investment purposes, but to help out the less fortunate, one of the tenants just stopped paying rent altogether. She hadn't paid rent in 3 months. And, of course, there's a mortgage on that house.
Exactly.
The tenant upstairs, she was struggling, and so we were trying to, whatever they couldn't do, we were trying to pick up that windfall and pay for it. But with 65% of our income gone, it was just impossible. And so the notices start coming in, not only from our primary mortgage holder, but the mortgage holder on the house in Detroit. Notices were coming in, 30 days late, 90 days late. And then the infamous notice of intent to foreclose.
Agreed. Now, if we took a slight pause while we're sharing this part of our journey with you, there's also the spiritual component that is definitely equally in our minds. And the thing again, I'm thinking is, where is God in this?
Yes.
Where is God? Last week we talked about how Job's response was to calamity and misfortune, and how he had it right. But as Toni and I both shared, Toni more emphatically...
I flunked that test. I flunked it with flying colors.
And on my end, of course, Toni is looking at me for spiritual soundness and a shoulder to... And I honestly, I tried to keep a stiff upper lip and trust in God. But in the back of my mind, I was wondering, Lord, what's going on? So I got to admit that I was starting to ask the question, why? Or Lord, I know this isn't what you want. I know that you're going to come through. And, But at the time, life is still going on.
That's right.
So here we have that faith strengthening test called testing or temptation, however you want to frame it. But Satan has approached God and hollered foul, and God has allowed Satan to impact our lives in a negative way. And Satan's whole intent and purpose is to pull our faith from God. So I mean, spiritually, I cannot say that we were solid, strong. Oh yeah, we'll be taken care of. We were really looking to the scriptures, and it's where you have to believe without seeing the results. Are you still going to trust me? And the scriptures that I read out of Isaiah and out of Joshua, there were periods when I'm sure these men were wondering, where was God? And I love the way God does come in and say, I'm here. I'm with you. But as you're going through it, you're expecting God to do something without recognizing, and I used that word a little bit last week, the sovereignty of God. That God is in control of things that we can't see. So when God says, I got you, and all we see is a bottomless pit, it's hard for us, to trust and believe in that, but we have to. While it's hard, never is it impossible, and it's actually necessary for us to trust when there is no apparent resolution in mind, or in sight, I should say.
And I think both of us went through our individual, faith journeys on this, because with me, I believed and I trusted, but part of me, that controlling piece of me, was like, okay, what do I need to do to get myself out of this situation? One of the things that was going on at that time that was totally brand new is that you had all these banks, and they would converge in one place. And we went to this, it wasn't a seminar, but if you had a mortgage with certain banks, they had this, they ran out this big hall, and everyone who was having problems making their mortgage payments or getting ready to go into foreclosure, all these lenders converged on one spot.
Right.
We had to bring all these documents with us. I mean, everything in the bathwater and the bathtub at the same time. And we waited in line, and we probably were there 4 hours, probably longer. People was bringing lunch and everything, but people were desperate.
There were hundreds of people. I want to say thousands, but I know hundreds of people that came, and it's not important where it was at, but you could tell by the amount of people, this was a definitely serious time in America, and the economic system that was, again, I use that word, hemorrhaging. And these are folk, and I'm sure that Toni and I are not alone, but these are folk who probably were paying their bills on time, and it just bottomed out. And so we're going to try to get help.
Exactly. And listening to conversations, either directly or indirectly, everyone pretty much had the same story. Now, of course, there were some out there who bought more than they could afford, but basically the majority of the folks that we sat with or around and listening to their stories, basically something happened, like a job loss, an illness, where it just did not allow them to pay their mortgage. So we, like the others, were there to say, I want to save my house. I don't want to walk away. There were so many people that would just walk away, and they bragged about it because they said, well, look, I'll walk away, and then before they reported on my credit, I'll go and buy another house. It was just ridiculous. And in my spirit, I felt the Lord gave this house to me, so I need to do all I can do to save it. Only to sit there after 4 or 5 hours for the representative to say, well, we'll look at your information. Right now, we can't really help you.
And in fact, I think the killing point that I drew from that was they said, we can't help you until you're 4 months past due. In essence, we can't help you until you go into foreclosure.
And that's what we were trying to prevent.
Avoid. Yeah.
We also went to credit counselors because we researched that credit counselor was a part of this as well. So we went to the gentleman, made an appointment, sat down with him. He went over our budget. I had everything itemized. And after sitting there for a half an hour, he says, you can't afford this house.
Well, tell us something we don't know.
Didn't we just tell you we lost a job? That's why we can't. I thought this was a program to help us keep our home or modify our mortgage, or at least lower our payments until we can get back on our feet.
But everybody was saying that we're saying, you can't afford that house. You can't afford that house. And Toni and I are saying, and I'll just say, but we want to keep the house.
God gave us
this house. Now you got to see how God is working in this, okay? And that's going to come out in a little bit. So we're hoping beyond hope that can't be it. That can't be it.
That's right.
And I think that it came to a head, if we're at that point right now.
After we went through all that, and Philip's still looking for work, still trying to get out there and find something, Philip and I sat at our kitchen table one morning, and I'll never forget it, and I uttered the words, Philip, we're going to lose this house, and so we need to find a way, if nothing else, to try to give the bank something back.
Right.
And I think we need to put it up for a short sale.
Now, as Toni uttered those words, I was not ready to give in. I was still hoping, and she knows this, that while I was hearing the words, I didn't want to accept what was in front of me. I didn't want to accept it. I was still hoping that God would come through.
And I was too. But in my heart, in my spirit, I knew that we had done all that we could do. I had went through every possible program, person talking to. I did all that I felt I knew how to do. And the conclusion in my spirit was, we have to let it go.
That is true. And for me, that reality came through one night. And I think I'll just frame it as a night because I was restless. I couldn't sleep. And I got up and I just broke down and I just cried.
Mm-hmm.
I went out of the room and it was just me and the Lord, and I was saying, Lord, why? What is going on? Why is it that it seems as if we're going to lose this house? I mean, why? And I asked those questions, why? And after God allowed me to get through crying and whining and complaining and doing everything I can to try and get my way. And that's what I had to recognize. I was trying to have my way. And I was cloaking it in the mask of I'm doing the will of God. I really wanted my way. And that was a reality I had to admit to myself. And God, I love my God so much because when he has to correct, he doesn't just backhand you and flies you across the room and never picks you up and allows you. God just stopped. It's like he spoke with a still small voice and he asked me a series of questions. He said, Philip, he says, how much money did you put down on this house? And I said, about $600 before they started building it. And he said, and who do you think got you this house? He says, well, Lord, I know you did. This is your house.
That's why
and for that reason, that's why I'm trying to keep it. And then the Lord just said this statement that broke me. And it held me too. He said, Philip, can't I do what I want with what I own? And I'll tell you, my spirit was convicted. My soul was humbled. And I loved my God even more at that point because I recognized that I am his to be used. This isn't my life. This isn't my house. These aren't my things. The cost of my salvation is worth the rest of my life being used as God wills it. So finally I broke down and I said, Lord, whatever you want, I will do. It's like going right back to that handmaid Mary when the angel came to her and she told her what was going to be her life. And Mary said, let it be as you have said. I found myself again convicted, convinced, and humble to that statement. Lord, whatever you want with my life, I am here to be used by you. And at that point, Toni, it seems like the wheels just started turning to transition us to the next place that God wanted to take us. God brought us out here to Phoenix. And at that time, I recognized that this time in Phoenix had come to an end, and we had to start transitioning.
And, I'm not going to, make this, portrayal that, I was okay after that, because, to be perfectly honest, I wasn't. I was doing things mechanically, but I had not accepted what was actually happening to me. Things were happening so fast. We hired a realtor who came in, and the day she came over and took pictures of the house, and then she put that sign in the front lawn.
And that hurt.
That hurt a lot. That's no joke.
But it hurt.
It hurt a lot to see that for sale sign in our front yard on the house that God built for us.
Amen.
However, I had to keep going, and so the beauty in some things that, even though we were stressed out, going through a stressful time, our Heavenly Father, my dad, he arranged it so we could afford to have movers come out.
No, you just don't know how much of a blessing that was. But those of you who did listen in with our story of moving out here to Phoenix,
that was no joke. And I'm 6-7 years older now.
But God did. God started to bless us in ways that we never imagined.
Yeah. So in preparation for that and trying to be a good steward, even with that move, we decided to have a yard sale.
Yep.
And we got rid of a lot of things that we didn't need, because during the course of putting the house up for sale and getting movers, Philip had contacted some of his old pals that he had acquired in Nashville, people that he had trained in their companies.
Right.
And he happened to talk to one guy and told him about the situation.
Right.
And he offered Philip a job in Nashville.
Right. And no, I think more expressively, he said, what do you need to get back here to Nashville? What do you need? And again, being good stewards of our money, Toni came up with the number that we needed. And when I mentioned it to him, he didn't even blink a finger. He says, I can have a check by the middle of next week. He says, when can you start? And I'm just saying, Lord, look at how you're blessing. Look at how you're blessing.
That's right. And, going through that process of having movers come in, I mean, we had to do the preparation work and things like that. But knowing that we didn't have to make that tumultuous trip back across country with a U-Haul and a car in tow, it made the situation a little bit more palatable.
It did. Toni and I can't underscore it any more of the hurt that we were feeling with our departure from our home, Phoenix being such a great place to live, the people we had met, the friendships we had developed, and now seeing that come to an end. I mean, these are neighbors in our neighborhood. A lot of us had gotten our homes about the same time. There was definitely forged some strong friendships on Toni's job and my job, So I mean, unhitching all of those, they hurt.
It hurt a lot. I mean, and you mentioned my job. I had been on the job at a behavioral health center for over 5 years as their HR director. And not only was that a job, it was a family to me. I had, like you said, had welded together some strong friendships, and the people that I met in recovery, talking to people about their stories, witnessing to people, encouraging people. They encouraged me. It was a job that I to this day, there's no other job that ever compared to it, other than the one I had in Detroit as a paralegal. And to leave that, it was so heartbreaking. I mean, they gave me a great big luncheon, a great send-off, but my heart was broken that I would have to leave these people. And at that time, my thing was, I probably will never see them again.
I think that was very true, that when we left, and I was probably speaking forward, but when we left Phoenix, my thoughts was, well, this is it. We'll never be back.
That's right.
So those friendships, I'm sitting, and you know how life is. Life goes on, and as much as you want to say you want to stay in contact, life has a way of just sometimes not letting that happen. And I didn't want it to happen, but I was a strong sense that I probably will not see those friends. There were couples that we married. There were, again, just a lot of that. And so Toni and I said our goodbyes.
Yes.
We got numbers and addresses and all of that. And we I got into our car.
We packed our car up, and we vacuumed out the house because again, the realtor needed access to it, and we wanted to make it look nice so that when people come in to see it, and we still hadn't sold the house even when we left. It was still a question mark.
Agreed.
But we did pack up our car, and it was loaded, and we drove out of the subdivision. We kind of went around the subdivision a little bit.
We did, yeah.
And we started out on Interstate 17, going north, and then we transitioned to
I-40 going east.
And we started our trek back to Nashville.
Yeah.
In Nashville, we had a 2-bedroom apartment waiting for us, but of course, going from a house to a 2-bedroom, we couldn't put all of our things in there.
Right.
And even though we downsized quite a bit, we still had a lot.
Yes, we did.
So we had to make arrangements for the majority of our household items to go into storage, and that's where it stayed. But the track of coming back to Nashville. Now, I'll say this, the Lord is still blessing in this because we were familiar with Nashville. It wasn't like it was a strange town, and it wasn't like a place where I don't ever want to go back. It was a great place to live and raise our family.
It really was, and having that welcome for friends that we had left Nashville, coming to Phoenix, and being able to come back to a place where you're welcomed, where you're wanted.
And even though Satan was crying foul at God's throne about you've been too good to them, you give them what they want, they ask for something and you give it to them. Even when Satan tried to make God out of, plain, unfair and favorites,
exactly.
God, in all that he allowed Satan to do, God still blessed us. He still blessed us. We had a safe journey there. We had a nice apartment, waiting for us. You had a job, and I was looking for work when we got there. But in all of that, the scriptures that Philip read earlier, it really came to pass because God told us to take courage.
Take courage. Do not be dismayed. Don't be fretful. And that's what he's saying, don't worry about what has happened to you. He says, I'm here. I will never leave you. I will never, as Scripture said, forsake you. It says, your part is to don't lose trust in me. Your part is to continue to meditate on my word. Reread those promises that I gave to you. In Romans 8:28, I think I said that one last week. For all things work together for good.
That's right.
Where he talks about Joshua, he says, when you do these things, when you follow my word, if you don't go to the left or to the right, if you don't fall out of faith with me, you will be prosperous. I mean, and those are things that Toni and I continue to believe and trust in. Because again, when you're out in that ocean and you're being directed, you have to have faith that God is leading you to solid ground. And you have no compass other than looking up and seeing God and saying, Lord, where do you want me to be? And so as we conclude this week, next week we're going to begin to talk about how God took us to our next place and destination. So join us next time with Let the Word Do the Work.
Amen. It is our prayer that something you have heard today will empower you to trust God more and let His Word do the work. Also, we want to hear from you. Like us and leave comments on our Facebook page at www.facebook.com/Let the Word Do the Work. No spaces. And remember.
What you gonna say? Let the Word do the work. Let me hear y'all.